to be connected in Iceland right now in this
Hi.
crazy storm. We're happy you have the internet still. Why don't you
Oh,
give us
yeah.
a firsthand account of what's happening over there outside?
Well, basically, the storm has passed. It was really, really heavy yesterday, but Reykjavik is really lucky. I don't know why, but the weather here is always a little bit shitty, but it never goes above a certain kind of, because there's like a shelter or something. So it was really interesting looking at the weather maps for the country, because everything was red and orange and purple and like colors that I haven't seen before in like these maps. But then Reykjavik was just like this cyan blue, which means like maybe 28 meters per second, which is not a lot. It's
Just
very,
another day.
yeah, yeah. And I
Reykjavik.
was walking outside last night while areas in Iceland were losing power and things were blowing, like literally only like 80 kilometers away, hundreds of roof kind of corrugated iron plates
Mm.
were just.
Oh, we get a little pause here. We'll be getting Svavar back here, I believe. So now you're still live? Yep. Okay. So
Yep, I'm here.
I have a feeling Svavar's internet has just blinked out and will hopefully blink right back on.
Yep, there he is.
There we go. And you're moving again. Okay.
Yeah, it's okay. So I froze there. Okay.
Yeah.
Computers, what are you gonna do?
Yeah. Well,
Everything's still in the correct settings, so it's good.
Yeah.
So Reykjavik got off pretty well, except for maybe the west end of town, which is the most out in the sea. But there was a lot of like waves and stuff, really hard waves. And the north of Iceland was really hit hard, and the east.
I was just going to ask about that, because it's probably fairly safe to say that most of the people on the call today have family in the north and the east. So we're all thinking about our friends and loved ones over there, hoping the best.
Well, thankfully, Icelandic, like how the settlements work is they're very, the houses, most of them are built out of concrete, so they don't blow over easily.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of flooding either, because it's so slopey, like that. It all just goes into the sea. But there are floodings, and there are like really dangerous settings, especially with regards to avalanches and stuff.
Yeah. And we're wishing our best to all the search and rescue teams, 91 teams around the country out there helping people, mostly on a volunteer basis, and we wish safety for them as well. So this is a very
the workload has exploded since the tourism boom,
Right. Well, and this is a very Midwestern way to start something, as we ask about the weather.
Of course, it's very Icelandic too.
Yeah, well, I guess that's where we get it. Now that we have that out of the way, how are you? Tell us about what you've been up to. I know you have a tour coming up. We have questions coming in on the line. I've got questions for you, but
wonderful.
Tell us a little bit about Svavar Knútur and how you got started in this great musical life you have.
My musical life. Well, I quit my day job 11 years ago, I think, right into the crash, the financial crash, by accident, and it was quite a journey to find my footing after that. But I did, and I started out just playing kind of songs for my own cathartic purposes, but soon I started developing also a passion for traditional Icelandic songs, the songs of my grandmother and her mother and all these people that have all this history, Yeah, it's just, I think I've just gradually just developed into kind of a mixture between a singer-songwriter and then a storyteller and like a folk root Icelandic folk melody artist. And I think that's been a very pleasant journey and exploration. And I'm a late bloomer, so that also has been a wonderful, wonderful journey. Just find my place in life.
Can you tell us a little bit more about the role maybe your grandmother played in the folk history in Iceland and how you see that being interpreted today in modern Iceland?
Well, it's not so much that she was singing a lot for me or anything like that. It's more like I became curious about her story and the story of my ancestors and where they came from. And in recent, really just years, I kind of made this, it opened my eyes to the importance of folk art and folk traditional music, because these songs and these stories, they carry the memories of generations. They carry, basically, they are the one way that people can like leave, like pass on their genes, so to speak, their historical genes or their cultural genes. That's the way that I have certain terms that I use, the certain words that are very familiar to me that I like to use. And why is that? Because it was my great grandmother, that was her kind of way of saying things and her outlook on life. And I think it's very important to hold on to these songs and share them with children and share them with people my age that have been losing them. Because if you lose that, you start to lose so much of your identity, the most positive parts of your identity. You know, these parts of your identity that are not all about like, yeah, you know, I'm a Viking, you know, because that's just a myth. It's a mythological, you were never a Viking. Not thought you was a Viking, really. But your great grandmother suffered, but still she saw the beauty in the world, you know, and she loved her children, and that is who you are, much more than a Viking. And your great grandfather, he couldn't talk about his feelings, so he made boats or something, you know, like, but the boats he made were filled with his love or his sadness. And all of this, it's all in the poetry, it's all in the songs. And if we learn these songs, we get a sense of identity that is much more substantial than a mythological identity.
That's beautiful. And
You know where I'm coming from?
Yes, because I know for a lot of us here in North America who grew up maybe with, you know, grandparents speaking Icelandic, it was the foods and the customs and the klena, and we try and keep some of that alive here. Do you have an emigration story yourself in your family?
Well, a lot of my mother's family emigrated. A lot of my maternal ancestors, they were all in the East. And a lot of them went on the boats because my mother's family was like the East Fjords were quite like, it was a hard life. And a lot of those people, there was a lot of death from starvation and poverty up until that time when we were allowed to leave by the Danish king with the Constitution of 1874. It really granted us this Exodus license, which was wonderful because it freed those people from a certain death. And I think, a lot of my maternal, family, that clan moved. They went to Vopnafjörður and took the boats out west. And what I like to tell people about is that Icelanders were not fleeing volcanic eruptions or a bad king. We were really emigrating from a horrible economical and feudal system where our own people were oppressing us. And finally, when we got the freedom to go to America, this is when their monopoly on the labor broke. So people could finally settle by the sea. and form villages and become fishermen and all of that. Until then, we had only been farmers up on the hills, and Iceland can only support 50,000 people with sustenance farming. But a lot more were being born. So a lot of people were dying all the time. So that's because we weren't fishing for our own sustenance. We were selling the fish. Well, the aristocrats were selling the fish out. But I think the emigration, I think that's the untold story of the people that left for America, is that they had a central role in our freedom. Because by leaving, they gave all of us the choice of leaving. And when we all had the chance of leaving, they couldn't hold us anymore. And that's amazing. That's the greatest gift.
Thank you for sharing the untold story.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to it, and it's much more complicated than that. But that's the gist of it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, you go.
Well, I'm just wondering, is there a folk song that's particularly resonant for you that you could play for us?
There is one called Sofðu ung ástin mín, which is a lullaby my father sang to me, and I think every Icelander, almost every Icelandic child of my generation at least, had this song to them. And it's got quite the history. It's not quite a folk song, it's from a play, but it is kind of written into a true story, just to explain the story. And it's very sad and very tragic. And it's actually, when you sing it and you listen to the words, you are like, do we actually sing this to children? Because it's very dark. It's about death and about hopelessness and about despair. And it is the song that an outlaw woman that was being, she and her man, they were being caught by a posse. And they knew that they would be killed, but their daughter would be raised as the daughter of thieves. Eyvindur og Halla, it's a very big outlaw story. And so she sang this lullaby to her daughter, and then she threw her in a waterfall. And and she said, it is better that you die now than that you will be raised as the daughter of thieves by the good people. You know what I mean? Because she would never be free, and she would never be let. They would never let her forget it. They would never. She would be basically. She would do the time for her parents. Sofðu unga ástin mín, úti regnið grætur. Mamma geymir gullin þín, gamla legg og völuskrín. Við skulum ekki vaka dimmar sem myrkrið veit, minn hugur þungur. Oft ég svartan sandinn leit, svífa grænan engi reit. Í jöklinum hljóða, dauða djúpar spor. Sofðu rótt, seint mun best að vakna. Mæðan kenna mun þér fljótt, meðan hallar degi skjótt. að mennirnir elska, missa, grát og sakna.
Thank you, Svavar.
Thank you.
It's a story I know I've heard before. I've never heard it in song. I think that's a haunting melody that's going to stay with us probably the rest of the day. So thank you.
I think there's a line in the end. It's that sadness will teach you soon enough, as the days grow shorter, that men will love, lose, cry, and miss. That's the end of the song. So it's very appropriate. I think one more thing I would love to tell you is that Western Icelanders, it's so funny. Whenever I meet you guys, I feel this immediate desire and longing to call you cousin or frændi, because that's very normal to me. And Lindy Vopnfjörð, the singer-songwriter, he is an absolutely wonderful guy. And this was the first thing we both said to each other when we met. Blessaður frændi. And I was like, whoa, you said it too. Like, it was really nice to meet a fellow frændi, Well, I'm sorry, you were.
I was going to say, I have a feeling a lot of people on the call are using the database that Suna runs. And if you haven't, Suna, check us out, will you? How are we related to Svavar? Because when you started talking about your mother's family sailing out of Vopnafjörður, that's the story a lot of us have. So we're going to be checking into that database.
Yeah, I'm the only Svavar Knútur in the world. You can look me up.
All right. Going to give us a report a little later.
Yeah. There's a question here from Julie Holdenborg. I'm sorry if I butcher this. So yeah, no, Kvöldvaka was not recorded in his living room. I moved here a couple of years ago. It's a wonderful living room though, and I've recorded the music for 1.5 albums in here. Yeah.
And Clementine is a great song. I saw she referenced that as well. So I know even spending time on your website and your Facebook page, folk music is a big part for you, but you're extremely eclectic. And looking back over the years with some of your bands too, I hear a little bit of metal here, and I hear some 80s pop music here, and then a folk song. So you have a tremendous range, it seems. Tell us a little bit how you developed that.
I don't know. It's just what I'm raised with, like the music I grew up with. And I've always thought that, don't get me wrong, but when I listen to a band that is always angry, like, rah, 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 they're always screaming and they're always angry. I'm like, are you still angry? Like on their 5th album, they are still screaming. And I'm like, what are you so angry about so many things? Are you okay? I have like 1 or 2 angry songs. That's enough. That I don't get angry so much. Sometimes I just get sad. Sometimes I'm happy. We have an emotional range. Although Icelanders are not very good, I think maybe you inherited as well. I don't know about that, but in Iceland, this is one of our little handicaps, that we have a perpetual bad weather face. Like, yeah, I'm very happy now. Yes. Mm-hmm.
I think I saw it in a quote on your, maybe it was a review I saw of your music where you say, they call it melancholic, but I'm just Icelandic. And I think a lot of the Scandinavian backgrounds, I was just having a conversation online with someone about how comforting the dark, long nights are of winter.
Oh, yeah.
And so I think that is something that has survived even for us who are a few generations.
I have this cup, a Moomin cup, somewhere around, lying around, and it's got a picture of a scenery, like just this little scene inside a house with the Moomin trolls. I don't know if you're familiar with them. this Finnish, a little, they look like little hippopotamuses. They are just sitting together by a table. There's a candle, there's a strange guy with a top hat sitting by the table telling a story somehow. And the shadows are very long on the walls. And for us, this is extremely cozy. Like when we see this picture, it evokes a deep, warm feeling of togetherness and the family or friends, or or even just a stranger that coming in and telling us the story of his journey. But when people from the south, from Europe or from America under the belt, not in the north, when they see it, they just see creepy. They say the picture is creepy, and we are like, well, how is it creepy to you? There's like big shadows. Like, yeah, shadows are nice. It means there's light. There's a source of light to cast all these shadows on the wall. That's a wonderful thing. And a source of warmth. It's just awesome.
Well, you were describing there too a little bit about being in bands. You've done a lot of solo work, especially from 2008, like you said. How different is that experience when you're on your own now or playing in a band?
Well, I actually, like, it's always fun to play with others. It's just because it's fun to play a group sport, and to have this kind of a social musical experience. But for me as a performer, I usually love to be alone, because then I'm much more at ease with telling stories on the stage. It's kind of hard to tell stories when you have like 5 other guys waiting. Like, and I'm like rambling on about some experience or something. Yeah, this was an amazing thing that happened to me, and like everybody is just standing there. But
this would be a good time because you have an audience here. Tell us a story, maybe about either the time your performance got moved from the church in Buda because it was so.
Oh yeah.
Or one of your Icelandic experiences.
Hi, krakkar. As my kids are coming in, they were at this little Advent thing. Hi. Role. Okay, so I was playing. Yeah, I was playing at this hotel in Buda a couple of days ago, and there was quite the wind. So it was actually keeping the church. We were supposed to play in the church at Buda, which is in Snæfellsnes, and there was so much wind that it was cooling the church down faster than they could heat it. And it was very noisy because it's just this old wooden church. So we moved into the hotel and everybody got hot cocoa and we were all sitting by a fireplace. It was really sweet. But I think the most Icelandic story I could ever tell about my career is when I was asked to play at this Advent dinner last year for an old folks home in Stykkisholm, in Stykkisholmur, which is another town on Snæfellsnes, very beautiful town. And I was asked to play for them. And I was coming, and it was very bad weather. There was a storm, lots of snow. The roads it was all like open or closed or open or closed, very slippery, very snowy, sometimes snow banks and stuff. And it was very unclear whether we could make it. But I said, man, it's like the postman. I'm like the postman. I have to come. These people are waiting. They want to hear songs. So I struggled through the snow. And I got there just in time, and I started playing. And then the ladies who were running the old folks home, they said, "Oh, Svavar, one thing. The man who is bringing the feast food, he is also driving from Reykjavik and he's stuck in a snowbank. So he's waiting for a car to pull him out. You might need to play a half an hour longer." And I was like, "Yeah, sure." So the other guy was actually the master of ceremonies also. It is so everything is like this connected. So the master of ceremonies was also bringing the food for the feast, and he was stuck somewhere on the road. And so I was just playing all these songs and having them sing along. And then this old guy was like, I'm getting pretty hungry. But everything turned out quite all right in the end. We were just laughing about it and the old folks were laughing. And it was very Christmassy. I think it was even more Christmassy because of this, that we struggled through the snow to get to them. And the master of ceremonies was also struggling through the snow. So that we all got there in the end and everyone was super happy. And experiences like this really kind of make it all worthwhile, I guess, for me.
Yeah. And I heard you say your children have been at an Advent event. It is that time of year. Do you have a favorite holiday tradition?
Oh yeah. We it's one nice thing about Iceland about this season is we don't call it Christmas. We call it Jól or Jul. I guess most of you are familiar with that. Mm-hmm. And you of course you have the Yuletide and Yule log and in the English language, but Jól is a very strict way. We only call it Jól because it actually means wheel, the wheel of the year, wheel of time, and it's a turning of the wheel. So what that also means is that the festival of Jól can be appropriated by everyone in the country, regardless of religion. So the Muslims in Iceland actually celebrate Jól with us, and the Buddhists and the atheists as well, because it is about the returning of the light, the re-emergence of the light. One of my favorite traditions, and actually because I have been thinking so much about this, the things that are passed on from our grandfathers and grandmothers, are these raisin oatmeal cookies that my grandmother made. She is now a little bit too old to make them, but she taught my father to make them. He made them also for Jól. And now I'm going to be making them. And I'm going to make it a yearly Christmas tradition to make them. And they're actually quite tasty. I can send you the recipe. It's a very, very classic fest, like a Yule recipe. And I have it.
We'll post it on the INLUS website.
Yeah.
Is there, and I'll give you time to eat that cookie, but I'm wondering if there's a Yule tradition song that maybe you can play for us.
Oh yeah, I absolutely love Yule songs. And we do Yule concerts here, me and my friends. And one of them is a very old one. It's called Nóttin var svo ágæt ein. It was a wonderful night. And it's a poem by Einar í Heydölum, who is our ancestor. He is said to be ancestor of all Icelanders. And he was in the east of Iceland. So it's like 99% sure that all of you who are listening now are his progeny. So this is your great grandfather's Yule song. It's about the birth of Jesus, but also in the words, there is this message that in every child that is born, there is the hope and promise of greatness and beauty and love. And then we should praise and celebrate every child that is born, Nóttin var svo ágæt ein, í allri veröld ljósið skein. Það nú heimsins þrautar mein, að þekkja hann ei sem bæri. Með vísna söng ég vögguna þína hræri. Með vísna söng ég vögguna þína hræri. Í Betlehem var það barnið fætt, sem best hefur andar sárin grætt. Svo hafa englar það rætt, sem endurlausnarinn væri. Með vísna söng ég vögguna þína hræri. bæði Guð og mann, í lágan stall var lagður hann, þó lausnaði heimsins væri. Með vísna söng ég vögguna þínar hræði. Með vísna söng ég vögguna þínar hræði. Lofið og dýrð á himnum hátt, honum með englum syngjum þrátt, friður á jörð og fengin sátt, fagnið því menn sem væri. Með vísna söng ég vögguna þínar hræði. Með vísna söng ég vögguna þínar hræði.
Thank you. And maybe you can tell us, since that was, from Einar, poet, we're, I think, all aware of the poetic tradition in Iceland. Is there any kind of troubadour?
Sadly, no. Iceland lost almost all of our folk traditions to the independence movement, really. There was a really sad situation in the late 19th century, early 20th, where they basically threw it all on the fire. Everything that had to do with folk, because they said, we are a nation among nations. We are fighting for our independence. So all this folk nonsense, it should be left out. But also we didn't have any instruments. There was so much poverty in Iceland back in the 16th, 17th, 18th centuries, 19th centuries. There was no tradition of instruments. Instruments were really just introduced into Iceland in the 30s, 1930s, really, like as a proper thing. We just had the singing. Even the langspill were very rarely functional, because we didn't even have strings for them. They tried to use post, like brass post wire, like from the parcels that came in the post. But brass wire really is not very, has not a lot of tensile strength. So it just didn't work. Sadly, we don't have a lot of troubadour tradition, but the thing is, and here's the thing, that does not matter so much in the big picture, because a language has a melody in it, every language has a built-in melody. English has its own melodic structure, and Icelandic has its own melodic and narrative structure. So it kind of, even if we had lost all of our old folk songs, if we start writing songs in Icelandic again, which is what we are starting to do really, like now, there's an awakening to write songs in the Icelandic aesthetic, in the Icelandic feeling. So when that happens, the melodies just come out right. I can demonstrate later, but there is a certain melody, kind of melody, that comes out when you write songs in English. But there is another kind of melody that comes out when you write in Icelandic. It's very interesting. And you hear it also in French and German and Spanish, and even in Thai and Chinese, Japanese. All these languages have their own unique structure of music.
So how would you describe the kind of present day music scene in Iceland? And is it hard to get attention outside of the country?
I wouldn't say so. Jeannie, we're cousins.
We're fifth cousins.
Cousins. That's a very, that's smart. The answers is that my answer that left. That's exactly who we're talking to. Then you're from the East Fjords. It fits. Okay. But
I will follow up with you.
what were we on?
On the today's music scene in
Oh,
Iceland.
yeah. Oh, sorry.
And Iceland's hot. We know people are
I
coming.
think it's not so hard because...
Yeah, Iceland's hot. We know people are making trips over for Airwaves and other festivals.
Yeah, and it's also like, because we're so small, no one feels threatened by us, you know? We never meet this resistance. For example, when I go to Germany, or when I go to France, or when I go to England, I don't meet the same resistance as a French or German or English or an American would meet, like in France or in Germany or in England. You think you're hot, coming from Germany or something. But no, like, we're just like, oh, from Iceland. Well, that's very harmless. You've never oppressed anyone. And I think people are more like curious, and they're like happy to like hear your story. A lot of people just kind of connect to that, and I don't think it's so much to do with like this myth. It's more like just people are open to it. And I think also Icelandic artists are very motivated to get to other markets, to other countries, because Iceland is so small that if we are trying to live off art here, it doesn't work. Like, you have to go. So we are very, very motivated to leave our hometown, which a lot of other artists are not in the bigger countries.
Well, and why don't you talk about some of the countries you've performed in? And I know your tour is either coming up or you've just ended one. Tell us a little bit about that.
Oh, touring. It's always nice, and I basically touring has become this thing for me that I make friends when I'm touring, and then I kind of have to go back on tour to see my friends again. Krakkar, vill ni leka? Älskade mina. The kids are watching Angry Birds movie. Hemma mín. Þetta alltaf lagi svona, sko. Okay. Yeah. No. You meet so many people around the world, and then you feel this motivation to go and see them again, and it's this like a machine that just like feeds itself, and it's self-fueled. But yeah, I was touring in Germany in October. I was in France now in November, and I'm going back to Germany and Switzerland, Austria, and then Scandinavia, and I'm hoping to come back to Canada real soon. So it's all in the works. It's a lot of fun.
We will watch for that anywhere in North America. I'm kind of a fan of your. I guess I came of age in the 80s as well. I'm a fan of your Big in Japan coverage. You would do for us. Speaking of touring,
yeah, I can do like half of it.
All right, let's have half.
Did you know that the band Alphaville that did that song, they were actually from a town in Germany called Münster. So when I played this song in Münster, they were like, "Dude, you know this song? So cool! They are from here! Haha! So cool!" So it goes like this. Winter city side, crystal bits of snowflakes all around my head and in the wind. I had no illusions that I'd ever find a glimpse of summer's heat wave in your eyes. You did what you did to me, now I'm mystery I see. Here's my comeback on the road again. Things will happen when they can. I'll be waiting for my man tonight. It's easy when you're big in Japan. Oh, you're big in Japan. Tonight, big in Japan. Be tight, big in Japan. With the eastern sea so blue. Big in Japan, alright. Stay then I'll sleep by your side. Things are easy when you're big in Japan. Oh, you're big in Japan. it goes
If I
like
had
this.
a Bic lighter, I would hold it up right now.
Yeah. There is a song that I wrote actually for the Western Icelanders that it's called Lady Winter, and it's quite poignant right now. And it sounds like a love song, but it's a song about this tragic feeling you kind of experience when one has to leave their country of origin, their homeland, because it's just not working out. They're going to die if they don't, which is a reality that is faced by so many people around the world. And when Icelanders were leaving Iceland in the 19th century, and early 20th, if this was today, they would be called economic migrants, because they were not running away from war. They were just trying to find a life. And it's strange how we've moved on from our sympathy with people that had that motivation to try to find a better life for them and their children. That we should have the sympathy that we have with our ancestors, that they had to leave. And this song is called Lady Winter, and I when I was writing it, I was just all the time just thinking about these people standing for the last night, looking at Iceland for the last time. Some of them would never come back, never see it again, most of them. And they would sacrifice so much. And it's basically this goodbye song to the land that you love, Out in the night, as the snow and stars dance discreetly, a glorious sight in the gloom consumed me completely, and her gaze is like the moonlight, and her gaze is like the moonlight, and her gaze is like the moonlight that drives a man insane. Out the sound rang in a choir of heavenly clangor, and oh how she sang, and her song was all that I longed for, and her voice is like a river, and her voice is like a river, and her voice is like a river that tears your soul apart. Tell her I'm scared, running out of places to run to, and now I'm there, losing all that's left, holding on to. And our love was like the ocean, and our love was like the ocean, and our love was like the ocean that sinks the strongest ship. Oh, and our love was like the ocean, and our love was like the ocean, and our love was like the ocean that sinks the strongest ship. Oh, that sinks the strongest ship. Oh, that sinks the strongest share.
Thank you. Like the
Thanks,
first
guys.
song you did, that one's heavy. That was a gift to us. And I'm so glad you played that one.
Thank you. I do have another one, like, because I said I wanted to explain like this Icelandic melody, the melody that I have this couple of songs that I have always felt have a uniquely Icelandic melody. And I think it's because the language calls for a certain kind of way of going up and down. And you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So there's this one here, like it's called Morgun. And even the chords are always a little bit, when I'm writing songs in Icelandic, the chords are always a little bit different. So this is like a
minor.
Like this. Lítill fugl í leyni, rúrir undir steini, kveður senn sitt næturskjól. So you can hear this is like a melody that goes in a total different direction than a normal pop melody goes, right? But there's a theme in the words. This is Emma.
Hi, Emma.
Is this your cousin? Hi.
A whole bunch of cousins on the line here.
And her brother is somewhere around doing his thing. Yeah, he's chilling in his little couch.
Well, and thank you for letting us into your home too.
Oh, wonderful. It's not, yeah, no worries. And I have this song called Januar, which is a song about winter and about which is because a lot of people hate the month of January, and I've always said that January is kind of like the garbage man of the months. You know, people don't appreciate him, but he is removing the darkness. You know, he's taking away the darkness. He is bringing light and hope. And you have to have this kind of perspective on things, that January is actually a bringer of light, even though it's a dark month. And I wrote this song called Januar, which is, I would say, one of the most Icelandic melodies I've ever written. I wrote it after my friend died last year. And he had this. He was this kind of guy. He was gruff and rough and but he was always the bringer of light in his own way, because he always wanted to make the world a better place. He was just gruff about it, and people didn't know where they had him, but you kind of had to love him because he was so awesome. And so this is for him. Gleypir allt, en undir snjóm ramri kaldri ró. Rumskar janúar, rymur hljótt og girði sig í brók. Fjandi dugar skammt, hún liggur flöt en skal á loft. Ó, janúar sem enginn nann. Hver dýrlegt þitt vanþakkláta starf. bak við tjöldin böðlast janúar. Eins og rótari eða ruslakar á mánudagsmorgni. Ó janúar sem enginn ann. Vanþakkláta starf. Og eftir allt sem hann gaf, janúar skríður aftur undir feld. Þar til skyldan kallar enn á ný, eins og snævi þakinn batmann. Ó janúar sem enginn ann. Hve dýrlegt þitt vanþakkláta starf.
Thank you.
Thank you,
I'm so glad you chose to close with that, because I actually got an email from a good friend of mine here in Minnesota that saw that we were going to be talking, and she asked if you could send a translation of that song. If
of course,
maybe not everything translates, but if you would share that with us by email. So she's heard that in North America, I think, somewhere.
Oh, really?
So yeah, and January's coming. My birthday's in January. It's the best month of the year, I swear.
Yeah.
So
But I think, like, for me, it's so important to tell, like, the stories of those who are not appreciated, you know.
Yes.
And
I want to close where we started with the weather. 'Cause two things that I'm noting. One, my husband's in England right now as an observer for their elections tomorrow, and they're actually worried about the gales of Iceland are going to interfere with their weather and have low turnout in tomorrow's election in England. But that reminds me that I was told once Iceland had a part in the French Revolution. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, we've heard that. Yeah, that's that story.
Can you tell that story before we leave?
Of course. You know, that we wouldn't brag about it though, but it is said, like, the French Revolution started because there was, like, a famine. There was a lot of hunger, and the people were really angry that was, like, not enough food. And it was the year with no summer, I think it was called. I don't know if it's correct, but maybe two things are banging together. But it was a year of great crop failures because of really bad weather and the lack of sunlight. And what it was that this is the year of the Móðuharðindi in Iceland. We had a huge volcanic eruption that lasted for, I think, 2 years, really. And it killed, I think, 1/3 of the population because of hunger. And it was 1783, if I'm not mistaken. Line, hold on. I'm just going to Google it real quick, so I'm not telling you. There's such a huge cloud of ash. Yeah, 1783 to 1785. So there was such a huge ash cloud that drifted south over Europe that there was a lot of crop failure and cold, and the sun didn't shine. It was like it clouded out the sun. And so it contributed greatly to the French Revolution in that the people were really angry and hungry and had enough, you know.
Well, these stories and your music and the weather all show that Iceland may be small, but it is big to the world. And I appreciate your time with us today. This hour went way too fast. You have a bunch of cousins over here now that's all letting us know how we're related. And we want to see you again, hopefully in person.
Wonderful to see you guys. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing your gifts and for singing to us and telling us stories today.
Thank you for putting this up. And I'll send you the recipe and the translation to the lyrics.
We would love it. So I think it's fair that we can all say goodbye, cousin.
Goodbye, cousins. Bless frændur.
Thank you, everyone.